We got a great guest today, Jonathan Karl. He is the chief Washington correspondent for ABC News and co-anchor of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He has covered 4 White Houses over the years, 14 press secretaries. He's a former president of the White House Correspondents Association. He's had multiple New York Times best-selling books. His newest bestseller, Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign that Changed America, is a must-read. Welcome to the show, Mr. Karl.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So first I want to start, before we get into the book, just a little anecdote about recently, just a little kerfuffle you had with the president on TV, and then what kind of happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Because it sums so much up about the guy. Please tell my audience about it.
Yeah, so I don't go to the White House every day anymore. I covered that building 10 years straight, virtually every day. But I went right after Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, had announced that the Justice Department was going to start looking into prosecuting hate speech. This was after Charlie Kirk's killing, and this is after all that had gone on with Jimmy Kimmel and everything else. So I just asked Trump a very simple question. What do you think about prosecuting hate speech? I mean, a lot of your supporters think hate speech is free speech. They don't like that. And he kind of, stared me down and he said, well, maybe she'll go after you because you have a lot of hate in your heart. And within about a minute, and as he still went on in his answer, by the time he was done speaking, he was telling me I should take my beautiful wife out to dinner in Washington, D.C. And then a few hours later, he was at it again. I was in the Oval Office. I was, the so-called pool reporter that day. And I asked him again about free speech and, related question. And he just tore into me. He said, you act like you're a wonderful person. Well, you're not a wonderful person. You're a terrible reporter. You know it. I know it. Everybody. And it went on and on. And then he was over with his event and the cameras are told to leave the Oval Office. I start walking out, but he motions to me to come over to the come to the Resolute desk. And he basically motions essentially, don't worry. We're good. We're good. And I said, man, you were tough on me there. He's like, no, you were tough on me. And he starts laughing and I start walking out. Thank you, John. This is after, with the live cameras rolling, he's telling the world, what a terrible reporter I am, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyway.
He's just such a transactional guy in the moment, and so much is obviously theater that I've known him for many years. He called me a friend. I did The Apprentice 3 seasons. He did my Big Idea show 5 times, and I've been very critical of him. And I know if I saw him, he would probably go like, what you been doing, man? Come on. What's going on? What are we fighting about? Like, he's just that guy. He's that's what people don't realize about him, that it's like you see the bravado, you see all of it, but how he can switch on a dime and how it's where he is at the moment and what's going on at the moment and how he can live in the moment like there's no before or after.
Yeah. I remember Reince Priebus telling me after he had been so unceremoniously fired and basically left to fend for himself at, after Air Force One landed at Joint Base Andrews. And Reince Priebus now suddenly, because of a tweet, finds himself out of a job. And it was really humiliating to the guy, And then he sees Trump a couple days later and Trump's like, hey, Reince, how you been, man? What's going on? It's great to see you. As if nothing had happened. And that's the way he is with everybody.
Well, brings us right into the book Retribution. And where you start the book is you basically call him the next morning or the next day after he wins to congratulate him and pick up the story.
Yeah. First of all, it's strange to call a presidential candidate.
How do you get through to him?
For years, because I've known him not as long as you, but I knew him when I was a New York Post reporter in the 1990s. I would always.
So did you know his pseudonym name? Did you ever speak? What was it? Jonathan something?
Jonathan Barron. No, he never did that to me, but he would sometimes say, "Okay, as a source in the Trump organization," and then he would tell me what he was going to say. So normally I would just have gone through Norma Federer or somebody in his secretary, somebody in his office, or Hope Hicks when he started running for president. But I started during the campaign calling his cell phone directly, and he would just directly to his phone, and he would answer, I swear to you, like 80% of the time. I mean, it was much easier to get a hold of him than to talk to like one of his campaign operatives.
Yeah.
Or like a junior person on Kamala Harris's campaign. He just picked up the phone. And I called him. I hadn't slept all night. I know that he hadn't. I assumed that he was way too busy to talk to me. He just got elected president again. But I figured I would leave a voicemail message and just say, congratulations. That was a hell of a victory. And to my surprise, he picked up the phone. It was like 7:30 in the morning, the day after the election. And I just said, Mr. President-elect, Jonathan Karl here. I just want to say congratulations. And he stopped. He paused and he said, on what? On what, Jonathan? You tell me. On what? And in the audiobook, I actually replay the call because it's so extraordinary. Because he at first I start laughing because I thought he's joking with me. Like, what do you mean? But he's not joking. He wants to hear me say
yes
that I had won. It's like Bryan Cranston as Walter White.
Yeah.
Saying to it,
say my name, say my name,
say my name, say my name. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Did the conversation go much further than that?
Yeah, he then, and then once I said, and I answered, I said, on the greatest comeback victory in the history of American politics. And then he's like, oh, well, thank you very much. Very nice of you. It was really quite a victory. It was and we talked for a few minutes, even though, again, he both hadn't slept for days probably. And he needed to get together, a new administration. But he talked to me for a few more minutes. I asked him, how are you going to start putting together your cabinet? What's the process? And he didn't have much to say, but he was always quite available and sometimes quite chatty, and occasionally would call me unsolicited during the course of the campaign. Since he's become president, I haven't done that much. I still think it's a strange thing, to call a president of the United States on their cell phone, for God's sake. Most presidents I covered didn't have a cell phone, but I have at key moments. I called him the morning after the U.S. strikes on Iran, and he answered. It was before 7 o'clock. It was like 6:30 in the morning. I called him right after Charlie Kirk got shot. He answered. I called him right before his Oval Office address about the Iran strikes. He answered. So, it's fewer and far in between. I only call if there's really something that I feel I need to. But he's, look, there's a lot that's said about the threat to a free press in this country. I think that it's real. But there are, in many ways, Trump is by far the most transparent president, the most transparent political figure that we've ever had.
I mean, you contrast Kamala Harris, where we know the mistakes she made from a media point of view, from an availability point of view, from a media range point of view. You contrast that with the president, who's everywhere all the time, everywhere, and we got a guy running for mayor in New York that seems to be duplicating that.
Yeah, absolutely. And where you saw that is when Mamdani went on Fox News. And no limitations on the interview, comes on, takes all questions, did very well in that interview, and probably surprised the hell out of a lot of Fox viewers. And Kamala Harris, I recount, she ended up doing at the end an interview with Bret Baier. And it was only out of desperation. They feared they were losing. They wanted to get another debate, and Trump was refusing to do another debate. They just wanted to find a way to reach an audience beyond the audience she had been talking to. And she finally goes on with Bret Baier, and she very narrowly defined, has to be 20, I think it was 20 minutes or 10. I forget what the time frame was, but it was like totally timed interview. And she shows up at the last possible second. And her people later told me that she wanted to basically do what you do to a kicker in a football game, trying to kick a field goal, ice him out, so, call that timeout right before, right after he's starting to kick. And that's what they did to Bret. And Bret was just annoyed by it and started, asking.
He was pissed off in the interview. Yeah. You could tell it was a very contentious interview. One of the passages in the book that to me sums up Trump so much is after the assassination attempt, and he's back. And all he wants to know, he's talking to his people, and all he wants to know, how does it look on TV? How's it playing on TV? I mean, that's everything. That is it.
It's everything. I mean, there are two things that are everything about that like 30-minute period. So the shots ring out. The Secret Service takes him to the ground. And by the way, I got a hold of these transcripts of the interviews that the Secret Service agents did with a congressional committee that they were publicly available, but they weren't. Nobody knew they were there. They were just sitting on a website, and they were a treasure trove to kind of give a minute by minute account of what happened. And one of the agents in that picture on the front of the book recounts about how they really were struggling to keep him down, and then to keep him down as they ran him into the armored SUV to get him the hell out of there. And he fought them off, and they're trained to keep him from being exposed again because they don't know.
Well, that's what you were thinking. Could this be a conspiracy? Because the fact that he popped up, you go, that's not, they would never let him do that. That's impossible.
And they tried not to let him do it, and he did it, and it was a violation. The Secret Service agent in this testimony said this is a violation of everything we are trained to do, because he does the arm raise and the fight. So his fans can see him, but that means a sniper out there can see him.
Yeah.
And he gets in in that armored SUV. They take him to the hospital, which is just a few minutes drive away. And his people are in other cars in the motorcade, and they're waiting for him to walk through, to be brought into the hospital. This is Susie Wiles. It's Stephen Chung, who's now his communications director. Yeah. It's Dan Scavino. It's Walt Nauta, the guy that carries his bags around. And the first thing he says to them as he walks in is, "How's it playing? We're making a lot of news. How's it looking?" And then once he gets into his hospital room, he wants to see the pictures, and they're showing him the pictures. Obviously he wasn't hurt very badly, but
that picture that you feature, obviously, you couldn't. I come from a background that we talked about as advertising. You couldn't create that picture. You couldn't. People would say it's too big, it's too broad, it's not possible. Everything from the color of the sky to the angle to the Iwo Jima quality of it. You could, and that's when you said to yourself, this guy. What is it? What is it about this guy?
I mean, that's the thing, because there are conspiracy theories about every assassination and an attempted assassination. It's something that happens, and I can't tell you how many people I've heard from since the book came out, just like people online who are like, "You don't believe that? That was set up. That was a setup." And I think you just nailed it. If you tried to set it up, there's no way you'd do it that good.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
It's impossible.
You couldn't do it. Such a riveting part of the book, and it's gotten so much attention, is your discussions with Pence and his notes. How did you get him to open up?
Well, the key thing here, I wrote an entire book about January 6th and about all that entailed. And, I had tried to get every bit of information I can get, but there was one thing that eluded me, which was and I talked about the phone call that Trump placed to Pence that morning.
Call him a wimp.
Called him wimp. And I had heard that Pence in his memoirs made reference to the fact that he took notes of his call, but those notes had never been seen. And the January 6th committee didn't have them. All the other reporters did great reporting. Of all the stuff, this is one of the most studied events, reported on events of the last quarter century. And these things. So look, I had a big assist from my colleague Catherine Falders, who is just a tremendous reporter. I want to give her a full, unambiguous shout out. A great reporter who did so much great reporting on the legal investigations into Trump. And we were able to unearth these. Obviously, I can't get into the sourcing, but we got the actual notes. They're in the photo section of the book.
Yeah, they're in the book.
And what's wild about him is you can, Pence is writing. You can tell he's writing quickly. He writes what Trump says. He writes what he says in response. And then at one point,
this is an emoji.
He draws like an angry face emoji. Which I never thought of him as the kind of guy that would do that. But he's right. I mean, you will go down as a wimp. I made a big mistake 5 years ago when I chose you. You listened to the wrong people. And then Pence writes, I listen to my heart. I listen to my mind. It's an extraordinary document in real time, especially when you consider that he goes basically from that phone call into his motorcade. It's like a couple of hours later to go to the Capitol where Trump supporters are chanting "Hang Mike Pence."
Incredible. You chronicle in the book Biden at the end, and you talk about a meeting with Nancy Pelosi that happened at the White House, and probably the last time they saw each other, and they actually ended up praying. Talk to me about that meeting.
Yeah, this is another. By the way, this is one of the things about writing a book, and why I really wanted to do another one after swearing after the last one I wouldn't do it again.
How the fuck? I understand you guys who have daily beats how you write books. I don't understand how that happens. It's like there's not enough hours in the day.
There truly is, and I'll tell you one of my secrets. And by the way, this one almost killed me. So I mean, this was intense. The amount of work that went into
and the stakes. I mean, so there's a lot on it.
But one of the key thing for me is I've kept journals for most of my life. Not as regularly as I would like to, but I've kept journals. And when I wrote my very first book on this period, Front Row of the Trump Show, I found that my journals that went all the way back to when I was a reporter at the New York Post were incredible raw material because you don't remember what you first of all just to have a timeline, but also to as I was writing these, knowing I was going to write these other books, I kept the journals. I put stuff in there that I knew I wanted to revisit, questions I couldn't get answered. What was going on? And one of the big questions for me was about that Pelosi-Biden dynamic. They were two of the biggest figures in the Democratic Party, for nearly a half century, figures that were close allies on so much, friendly. They were more than just allies. And here Nancy Pelosi is basically playing the role of Brutus. I mean, she is working to get Biden out of the race, and doing it gently and not directly, but it got more and more intense. And the most intense moment came when she was on Morning Joe.
Yeah.
And it was right after Biden had put out a very definitive and declarative statement that he was not getting out of the race and telling people to buzz off, that, he won the delegates, the primary is over, and we have to stop talking about this. And she came on Morning Joe and told John, in response to a Jonathan Lemire question, and said, the president's got a decision to make. And I hope it's like, what do you mean he's got a decision to make? He made it.
Yeah.
So we knew at the time, it was reported at the time, that the two of them spoke after that Morning Joe appearance. It was reported by some as a phone call. Others said it was a meeting, but we had no details and nothing about what transpired. So I set out to try to learn as much as I could about where it was, exactly when it was it a phone call? Was it a meeting? And the story is extraordinary because I found that it was a secret meeting that both Biden and Pelosi kept secret from the White House staff. She came in through the residence. A woman named Annie Tomasini, who was on the White House staff, but really more of almost a member of the Biden family, arranged for her to come in secretly through the residence, probably passed by the erstwhile East Wing of the White House.
Erstwhile.
Went up into a place, I don't know if you've ever been there. I haven't. It's called the Yellow Oval. No. It's basically the living room for the presidential family. And Pelosi, I later talked to her about it. Said she had never been. I mean, she thought she had been there maybe once or twice in her life, but it was a new part of the White House for her. And the two of them met one-on-one. I detailed the conversation, which is Pelosi expressing the concerns about House Democrats about Biden and what was going to happen in the election if he stayed in the race. She didn't tell him to get out, but she expressed these or relayed these concerns. And at one point, Biden calls one of his aides, Tom Donilon, Mike Donilon, gets him on the phone and speakerphone. And Mike Donilon had no idea this meeting was happening. and gets him to try to refute what Pelosi's saying about the polling. I mean, they were a little deluded about where the race was.
A little deluded.
And when the meeting ends, Pelosi takes out her rosary, which she carries with her wherever she goes. It's a rosary coin, and she suggests that they pray. And then Biden reaches into his pocket and takes out his rosary, because they are both these devout Catholics.
Incredible.
And they say this prayer together, and they have seen each other since then, but they have not had any kind of a conversation since that meeting.
Because of your reporting, that'll go down as the most famous prayer in the White House since Al Haig and since Kissinger and Nixon. Yeah. Incredible story. One thing I was really surprised to learn about, I was disappointed when there wasn't a kind of a mini primary, something that there had to be some kind of, I think, something where the voters could get to see the candidates in action. And then Obama was caught by surprise. And that's what he wanted also. And the way he found out about it, that she had been anointed. And I was shocked to hear that, because I thought he was the one pulling the levers behind the scene.
He was trying to quietly pull the levers to get Biden nudged out of the race. And he was communicating, I know of at least 4 conversations that he had with Nancy Pelosi before Biden dropped out. And they were, that includes the day he dropped. So 3 conversations before, and then 1 just as Biden dropped out. And the 2 of them had agreed, nobody knew this at the time, but the 2 of them had agreed that there really needed to be some kind of a primary process, or some kind of a process where the delegates would have a say, something that would go through. And they both agreed that neither one of them would endorse Harris until she went through such a process. They didn't rule out endorsing her if she won that,
sure,
but they didn't want to endorse her before she had done that. And what happened is that the next day, the day after Biden drops out on a Sunday afternoon. By Sunday night, she has the endorsements of really anybody that would have run against her. Shapiro, Pritzker, I believe, Gavin Newsom, Whitmer, so there really wasn't even a window for for some kind of a process. But still, Nancy Pelosi did not endorse that night. Neither did Barack Obama. But the next day, Pelosi, under enormous pressure, endorses Kamala Harris. And Barack Obama calls her. And I talked to somebody who overheard the call. So I've got somebody directly overheard this call. And Obama is saying, what did you do? I mean, why? I thought we were, what was that all about? And, the Obama, a spokesperson for Obama told me that Obama acknowledged that he said exactly that, but said that he was really kind of joking and giving her a little bit of a good-natured hard time. I mean, I don't know. But somebody close to Pelosi said it was very clear that Obama was really upset. So you can be the judge.
The judge,
but Obama didn't endorse for another several days, and clearly had, I think had doubts about Harris, first of all, as a candidate, period, but more importantly, worried about the optics of her simply being anointed by party leaders.
What a stunning mistake. Not only would you have come out, I think, with a stronger candidate, you would have owned the media for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. You would have created your own universe of as opposed to Trump owning it, where you can't pull it away from him. That would have pulled it away from him. You would have ended up with a stronger candidate. I think you could have had a different outcome in the election. I mean, obviously, hindsight's 20/20. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, one thing that's clear is that there was an incredible amount of energy and excitement among Democrats that Biden had dropped out and they could have a fresh start. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those counterfactuals that we'll just never know.
One of the things that you say you get asked all the time, and I get asked also, not that I have the insight that you have, is, is Trump going to stick around longer? Is he, and every instinct I have about the guy is he ain't going to want to go anywhere. I mean, this is the greatest show on earth for him. Yet he has told people privately, I'm not staying. He said that last week, basically as much. What's your thoughts on that? Just you have such a sense of the guy from having written 4 books, having covered it for years. Yeah. I'm just getting your sense. And I'm seeing him build this ballroom, this $300 million ballroom. I can't see him building that for somebody else. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
I think that right now in his head is he's going to walk away when it's over. He's not going to try to stay in power. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for him to leave the spotlight. I think that you can't rule out.
I mean, that's his heroin. That's his heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, attention.
I mean, it really is. I mean, just imagine. You just think about it this way. What's it like for Donald Trump to have a Republican convention that's not about him?
Yeah.
I mean, that's his thing. I mean, is he really going to go to a convention and, just be like, it's yours now, JD. It's yours now, Marco, or whoever.
Donald Trump Jr.
I think it's and I certainly don't think he wants to see it as Donald Trump Jr. I think it's going to be very, very hard for him. But I do know that he has told people privately, look, I'm done when this is over, and he also quizzes people. Who do you think it should be? Should it be Marco or JD? But I mean, here's a question for you. I mean, who's the first Republican to announce they're running for president?
No one. Yeah. No one until he announces. I think it's going to be one of his kids. I think I can't see him letting go. I think, and I also think, I don't think he's transferable. I think Trump is a unicorn. I don't think that this is where the world's going to be. I don't think you can take Trump and give it to somebody else for all the obvious reasons that you would know better than anybody else. So it's going to be an interesting time.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree.
One thing I never understood about him in knowing him, in that the guy has this need for adulation, he wants to be loved. He wants to be admired. If he changed such a small percentage of what he does, what I call the stupid stuff, the stuff, you know what I mean? Just the FCC stuff, the stuff with getting guys off vans off of the street and picking up mothers, the bad stuff, that he could go down, he would have an approval rating of 70. Because there's a lot of there's a lot of heroic, there's stuff he's did with Iran, and this stuff he just, I mean, he could clean it up and be so wildly popular across the board. I never understand when I put those two things together why that doesn't happen.
You saw it in the first term too. I mean, he's got this self-destructive streak, and often it comes out when things are going best for him.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
You remember his first State of the Union address, which was like,
it was really nasty. But that was wait. No, I'm thinking that's not the carnage speech.
You're thinking of the inaugural address.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the carnage speech, right?
But then he comes into the House chamber for the State of the Union, a month or two later, and it's just a great moment. I mean, he really has it down, and it's not particularly divisive. The message was fairly unifying. The reaction in the hall was really strong. I mean, not from the Democrats, but even some of the Democrats were applauding at times. And, within a day or two, he's off to, just taking it all down. He really, I mean, because there's an element to his leadership style that is incredibly effective, which is like, we're going to cut through the bullshit, and there's so much red tape, slowness. I mean, the so-called interagency process that's all put there to ensure there are checks and balances, but has become ossified. I mean, it's become, I think one of the great examples of that is the way he basically allowed the Abraham Accords to go forward. Now, this was not Trump's idea. Trump didn't push the Abraham Accords. This was Jared Kushner, and there was a key guy at the State Department, and there was obviously the key role of the UAE ambassador Yusuf Al-Attaba, who really came up with the idea. But it was a bold idea, the idea that Israel could make separate peace agreements, essentially establish relations with individual Arab countries, and move forward. That never would have gone through Biden or Obama or Bush, or I mean, it would have been killed 1,000 different ways, and it bypassed the entire process. It was like 3 people, making it happen on the U.S. side.
That's the way it has to happen.
Yeah,
I'm always waiting for that moment you take after the horrific Charlie Kirk shooting. He comes out immediately. It's the left, as opposed to just saying what the world would have been on its head if he had come out and said, this has got to stop for both sides. It's got to that one twist moment where you just, and his detractors just would be speechless. They wouldn't have anything to say.
Yeah. And he has the ability to do something that no other Republican president could ever have done. And that is to force his party to come along with what he was going to do. I mean, he, Steve Bannon still pushes, but pushed very hard in the first year of the first term to make that tax bill that was passed to raise taxes on the wealthy and to do away with the carried interest exemption. All these kind of,
he's a populist,
almost a little tiny pinch of Bernie Sanders the kind of thing that no Republican could have ever gotten through, but he could have done it. Guns. Do you remember his reaction after Parkland?
No, I don't.
And so after Parkland, he starts. I remember I was in the meeting when he's meeting with the bipartisan congressional leadership, and he's suggesting that maybe it's time to have regulate guns in some way. Maybe we need to do better background checks. Maybe the kind of common sense stuff. And he could have gotten away with it. No other Republican could have. They would have been, NRA would have gone nuts. But he could do things because he has the complete command of the party, and it's not because of ideology. It's because of in part that cult of personality and how much and how much they all feel that they owe him and fear him politically.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jonathan Karl, you are a gentleman and a scholar of the book, a must-read, Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. So you're done with books for a while. We're going to take a little time out?
I think I'm going to take a little time out, at least from books about the current political world. I've got kind of a South Dakota book I may want to write.
There you go.
I grew up in, but yeah, I would like to take a break from this and come back after,
well deserved.
It's all over.
Congratulations on all the good stuff you've done. I really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it.
Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.